2011 Chevy Silverado K, or it's a four-wheel drive, 3/4 ton four-wheel drive. It's here for Service Stabilitrac. Message on the dash. Scanned it. We've got a fault code C0710, steering angle signal circuit plausibility failure. So I'm probably going to need a steering angle sensor at the base of the steering column. I think I've changed these before. I'll have a look at some data. So looking at data related to the steering angle sensor or steering wheel position sensor, everything looks reasonably normal. The steering wheel is approximately straight ahead, and it's showing negative 0.6 degrees. If I turn it to the right, it goes positive up to 220 degrees, and if I turn it to the left, it'll go negative 220 degrees. 210. I think we're at 0 again, roughly there. Now I cleared the code, it came back immediately. Now I do notice this yaw rate signal at negative 115 degrees per second, so I'm not sure if that's a normal thing or if that's abnormal. It doesn't sound normal to me. I got a feeling that this thing needs a steering wheel position sensor. It's not expensive, but I'm not sure exactly how much work is involved in changing it. They have 4 at the dealership, which is a sign that it's a common failure. Okay, so I found some information on testing this by looking at data parameters. Steering wheel position signal A and steering wheel position phase A and phase B. The phase A and phase B are digital signals that should go high-low as you're turning the wheel, and the steering wheel position signal in voltage, which is like a confirmation, should be about 2.5 volts as it is with the wheel straight ahead. And when I turn to the left, I believe it should go down to about 1 volt, and when you turn to the right, it should go up to about 4.1 volts. These two signals should show a digital pulse. Now, because we're graphing data, the best thing to do is to use a custom data list and only pick these 3 data parameters. That way you'll get the fastest refresh rate. So I'm going to turn the wheel slowly to the right, considerably past. See, this one seems to be dropping out. So I think I'm almost at the steering stop now. So now we'll try turning it all the way back. And this should drop down to about 2.5 volts with the wheel straight ahead. And these signals should be the digital signal. Now, it'd be better to test this with a lab scope, but that means crawling underneath the dash. See, this one just stopped producing a signal here. So I'm going to call this steering wheel position sensor, based on the fact that it's a common failure. And they have 4 in stock at the parts department, and it's not a huge amount of money. So we'll get one sent out. So this is the steering angle position sensor, or steering wheel position sensor, for this 2011 Silverado. Or actually, yeah, it's a Silverado, it's a Chevy. So we're going to go ahead and change that. It requires removal of the steering column. So I've disabled the battery, disconnected the battery cable, and we're going to go ahead and remove the steering column. So there are 2 Phillips headed screws on the bottom of this knee bolster, and then 1 hidden 10 mil up from the bottom. Then you have to disconnect this trailer brake control connector if you have that option. And we're into the dash. Now we're going to have to remove this plastic here, I believe. So remove that brace, 4 10mm nuts. Now I see this has got an aftermarket car starter in it, because we do have to disconnect the harness that goes to the steering column This is how aftermarket car starters get installed. Here you can see this module and this harness here. This is all just aftermarket stuff that's been put in. Hope that doesn't complicate things. So this is where that sensor sits, right at the base of the steering column. And if they hadn't put this guard over top of it for whatever reason, you'd be able to just slip it right off the end of the steering shaft here once you disconnected this intermediate shaft here. But that's why it requires removal of the column. I'm just looking to see if there's some way to get that piece off, this brace, because that has to come off, and I think it's attached up top here, but I don't remember how. I'm going to see if I can figure that out. So disconnect the lower steering shaft, intermediate shaft, mark it, because you don't want to make sure the steering wheel is straight ahead and the wheels are straight ahead. Take the pinch bolt out, and then I'm going to I've lowered the steering column with the 4 fasteners, and in here, way back in here, I don't know if you can be able to see with my fingers pointing, there is that plate, and it has 3, looks like T20 or 25 headed bolts that hold that guard on. So I'm going to try and remove that guard, leave the steering column here sitting on the seat. That way I don't have to disturb any of the wiring, shifter cable. I just need to slide that sensor down the shaft. We'll give that a try. As I said, there's 3 T25 headed screws, self-countersunk screws on here holding this shield. This actually is for the shifter cable so it doesn't rub on the steering shaft. The shifter cable runs through here, but you can weasel it out. And now that that's out of the way, I'm hoping that we can get at that steering position sensor and just slide it down the shaft now. So here's the old sensor off. There is a plastic shield on the back of the sensor with 3 retaining clips, so you need a little release tool to unpop these little clips. This comes off and then the sensor just slides down the shaft. Now the new sensor comes with a locating pin in it. Don't remove that. We're going to slide the new sensor up and make sure this is indexed into the housing and the steering wheel is straight ahead. You notice I wrapped some tape around the steering wheel just to keep it from turning, but be conscious that it should stay straight ahead. So there's the new sensor, and there's the little locating pin that centers it. Make sure that stays in there until you're got the sensor mounted and the steering wheel straight ahead, and then you can pull that in out to put the black plastic piece that retains it on. Make sure you put Loctite on the intermediate steering column pinch bolt. It's kind of an important bolt. If it falls out, it could be exciting. So there's the sensor back installed, steering column reattached. Make sure this shift cable goes through that loop in the guard there, otherwise it might rub on the steering shaft. And that's pretty much it. We just got to put the brace back in, and then the knee bolster and the lower duct here, and we're ready to reconnect the battery and do a recentering process on this sensor. Okay, so I'm going to clear the codes from this controller that was in the airbag, no, not airbag, in the anti-lock brake computer, and it's over 8600 dBW, and it has vehicle stability enhancement. Codes menu, clear codes, yes, and then go back and just make sure we don't have any codes. Good. Now we're going to go into functional test, output controls, yaw rate sensor calibration. No, gotta find it. Well, I reviewed the repair procedure, replacement procedure for this steering wheel position sensor, and it mentions nothing about centering it, other than making sure that the pin is in place until it's installed and the steering wheel is straight ahead. Now, looking at ABS data, Looking at ABS data, let's see what the steering wheel is straight ahead looking at it. It's at negative 0.3 degrees. These are the data parameters I watched before, but I should make a custom data list. The refresh rate would be faster then. So I've got it running now. We're monitoring steering wheel position phase A and phase B, which are two digital signals. The actual calculated position in degrees, and then a voltage, an analog voltage, which I think is a backup signal. It should be about 2.5 volts. So I'm going to slowly turn the wheel to the right, and then back to the left, and then back to center. Well, it seems to be working fine. It's not setting any codes. Before it would set that fault code for the position sensor Implausible, I believe it was. So we'll call this one a wrap. Seems to be good. We'll take it for a road test, and if there's anything comes of it. I couldn't find a procedure for centering it. It doesn't mention anything about centering it other than using the pin to make sure it's aligned when you're installing it. Thanks for watching.